going on, Fourth Initials Fantasy Football listeners? We got Dan and Stevie P today. What's going on, Dan?
What's up, Steve? What's up, listeners?
What's going on, everybody? Kev can't be with us tonight. He has other obligations with the family. So, family comes first. And wish Kev and his family a good time tonight. So we are going to go over the team breakdowns today, go over some news, and go over last night's game that actually wasn't terrible until the end. So let's get into that. Let's do the news.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, so in injury news today, we have Cam Newton, we already know, is out. Drew Brees also still out. They have videos of him throwing the football, looking pretty good out there. It's a smaller sized football than a normal football, but he still looks good doing it. Rudolph with that concussion won't be playing in this game. We got Todd Gurley. They're saying he's doubtful, so we're just going to list him as out. Whenever we do these listings of injuries, if we ever see somebody doubtful, we're just going to put them as out. But make sure you check those out, because sometimes something miraculous happens and the guy feels much better the day of the game. But so far from what we know, he's doubtful to play. AJ Green out. He's been practicing, limited practice. Looks like he should be back relatively soon. If not next week, definitely the week after. Albert Wilson is had some limited practices, but it looks like they're saying he's going to be out. We got D-Jax going to be out this week. Hunter Henry has a full practice today, but he is listed as out. So that's promising for anybody who has Hunter Henry on your fantasy team. If you don't have him on your fantasy team, he's on your waiver wire, and you're in a league that starts the tight end, you might want to pick him up now. Sammy Watkins is also doubtful, so we're going to list him as out. Vernon Davis is a surprise out. They said that he was limited practice yesterday, and now today they're saying he did not practice and he will be out for this game. So on the questionable side, we have Alvin Kamara did not practice today, and he is questionable for this weekend, so keep your eyes and ears open for that. Chris Carson also listed as questionable, but he is a full participant in practice this week. We got David Johnson was a limited practice, but he'll be a game time decision according to Cliff Kingsbury. Latavius Murray did not practice today also, so keep your eyes and ears open to what's going on with the Saints. Rashad Penny also questionable, limited practice today. Albert Wilson, I already read that. Amari Cooper is going to be limited. He's had 3 limited practices this week, but all signs seem like he's going to be fine for the game. Cooks was a full practice today, so he should be going. He's questionable. Christian Kirk, 3 limited practices this week, and Cliff Kingsbury also said he would be a game time decision. We got Cortland Sutton, full practice today, questionable. Jamison Crowder, full practice today, questionable. Julio Jones, 2 limited practices this week. He did not practice Wednesday, limited on Thursday, limited on Friday, so it looks like he's going to go. Larry Legend, full practice today. He should be good. Tyreek Hill, 3 limited practices this week. Will be a game time decision, according to Andy Reid. Delaney Walker was a full practice today. George Kittle was a limited practice today, but it looks like he's going to go. Mark Andrews, also a full practice after being limited 2 days this week, should be going. Devontae Adams did not practice. They're saying that it's going to be probably 2 to 6 weeks from the date of the injury. So we all know, that happened 2 Thursdays ago when he faced the Eagles. So he's probably not going to play this Thursday night. He's listed as doubtful. And we will see when he's going to be back. We'll probably know a little bit better after Monday, when on Tuesdays when they break down, injuries. Kenny Stills is going to be a game time decision. And TJ Hawkinson is on track to play after that concussion we all saw, hit his head pretty good there. The Giants signed Buck Allen and got rid of Hilleman. And Melvin Gordon is listed to get more reps, according to Anthony Lynn.
Yeah, I think he's projected to get at least 60% of the reps this week. I think they just wanted to ease him in week one. Obviously, they weren't going to just throw him to the wolves, but he's going to eventually get his full workload back.
Yeah,
even as good as Eckler's doing, he's going to be. You can't hold him out. He's too talented. 70% of the plays.
Exactly, and that's the other thing. You know what I mean, like with Melvin Gordon, he's also one of those backs that he gets better as the game goes on. So I think Anthony Lynn recognizes that. Not to mention the Chargers need to figure out if they're going to keep him this year or next. You know what I mean? They might do a situation like DeMarco Murray a couple years ago with the Cowboys, where they just run him into the ground and let him go. Either way, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with him. So I think Melvin is in line to start getting a whole lot more touches. Don't get rid of Eckler. Eckler I think is still going to be viable. I could see a 70-30 split like it was last year, 75-25 some games. So Eckler, is still a dynamic back who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's going to be used. All right, so that is the news. Let's get into that game from yesterday. So it was terrible when you consider how many turnovers there were, but the Giants' defense really played, I thought, pretty damn good. You know what I mean? They got some turnovers. They actually scored a touchdown in that game. For me, the Giants' defense is probably not a defense you're going to be starting every week, but in a good matchup, I could see myself, using the Giants, especially like in DFS, because they were getting after Tom Brady yesterday, and that's the other thing. I don't know if you noticed, Dan, but the offensive line for the Patriots is just not good.
Yeah, it's getting worse. It started the season off pretty. I mean, they played bad teams in the beginning of the year, and Giants, front actually is decent, and yeah, they definitely made it a priority to get after them, and they had pressure on them the entire game, and that's caused some turnovers. For me, I think that they played hard for 50 out of 60 minutes, 55 out of 60 minutes, and they just looked like they were frustrated because they were doing everything they could to keep them in there, and Daniel Jones was a turnover machine, and the Patriots defense was just scoring left and right. It was, as much as they were battling what they could do, they were running uphill.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, it was it's just one of those games, you know what I mean, that when your defense is playing that good, it's a little frustrating for them, and it's a little frustrating for, the team as a whole. You could see Daniel Jones was really trying out there. Just, he didn't have it last night. You know what I mean? He threw a couple of balls. They were just really bad balls. The Stephon Gilmore throw that Stephon, caught the interception, going out of bounds. That was literally right to him, and he made a couple of throws that, you look at them and you were like, wow, like that throw that he threw to Golden Tate for that, 70-yard touchdown, that was a hell of a throw. That was right where it needed to be, because if it was out any further, Golden Tate doesn't make that catch. And if it's any closer, Jones knocks that pass down. So it was literally right where it needed to be. So you see glimpses of Jones being very good for just for fantasy and for the Giants. So I think they got a good quarterback. They just need to work with him. It is what it is. So let's talk about the numbers in this game. If you look at what each team did, the Patriots really didn't do much. You look at Tom Brady's numbers. He had 334, but it really was like at the end of the game. He started, Julian Edelman, was being targeted basically all game. He had 15 for 9 and 113 yards. Tom Brady didn't throw a touchdown. He did throw a pick in this game, and actually the pick was, I think it was a miscommunication between him and Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman was supposed to cut out right, I guess, and
because Tom doesn't make a throw like that bad. That was way behind him. It would definitely look like he thought Julian was going to cut to his right. Julian went to his left. Ball soared on him, and yeah, it looked like it was miscommunication. Yeah, Tom did have two rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, he did have the 2 rushing touchdowns, which ended up helping him out. But for passing wise, the 334 looks good, but he really, in the beginning, especially in the beginning of the game, he didn't look like he had it early. And then he just started, getting into a groove and looking much better. Like I told you, in close games, James White is going to be used a whole lot, and he was in this game. James White had nine receptions for 46 yards. It's not a whole lot of yards, but, in these close games, it's going to be the James White show. You know what I mean? James White is going to be Tom Brady's, little blankie. It's his security blanket. So, Sony Michel owners are a little bit pissed off after Brandon Bolden, ran the ball, I think it was twice from the 1 yard line. But, Sony did not look good in this game. That's the one thing I will say. He kept running in the back of his lineman. He kept getting, he just can't break a tackle. You know what I mean?
His only good run was the last play of the game when he got to the 8 yard line when Giants pretty much gave up. I thought he was going to actually get in there, but that was like a 26 yard run. That was his best play of the game. Other than that, he was going side to side way too much. Yeah. He never found any holes. He never went straight ahead. He was bouncing around side to side.
Yeah. And he just doesn't break tackles. He really doesn't. The one bright spot that I actually thought on the Patriots defense that I think could be something was Jacoby Myers. He made some really good catches in this game. He caught a ball, where the defender basically draped on him. And he actually, if you watch the play, he moves the ball up so that the defender can't bat it out of his hands. It was kind of a heads up, good catch play. So, look out for Jacoby Myers, especially if Dorsett is going to miss a couple of weeks. Jacoby Myers could actually just end up taking his job because we all know, Philip Dorsett is not the greatest wide receiver in the world. So, and I think Tom Brady likes Jacoby Myers. I think he likes the kid. So could be something there. Other than that, Sony Michel had another 2-catch, 27-yard game. And there's not really much to talk about in this game. It was a whole lot of Edelman, a little bit of Myers, a whole lot of White.
Golden Tate.
Yeah, I was talking about for the Patriots.
Oh, okay. You were just talking. The Giants weren't really relevant except for Golden Tate.
Yeah, it literally was just Golden Tate on the Giants side. John Hillman, looked terrible. Elijah Penny looked worse. It was just bad. Darius Slayton was targeted a whole lot in this game, but didn't do anything. Rhett Ellison was also targeted a lot in this game, didn't do anything. 3 for 30. Golden Tate, like Dan just said, it was 6 for 102 and a touchdown. He had 9 targets in this game, but he also had a 70-yard touchdown in this game. So that really boosted up his numbers. So, for me, not too much that you're going to be worried about on this Giants team until you get Saquon back and Evan Ingram back and all the guys healthy. This Giants team is probably a stay away.
Yeah, if you take away that one play for the Giants, what was it, like a 70-yard touchdown?
Mm-hmm.
They had like 150 yards of offense. It's crazy.
It's so bad.
Total offense.
It's so bad. It's just, they're tough to watch, man. They really were tough to watch on offense last night. I know they were trying, but it is what
that
it is.
Patriots secondary they are so shut down though. They're incredible. Them in Buffalo, man. You watch those corners, they get on you without making contact to you. Like, I mean, I know that they give them a little bit because they're not all. They're more cover corners. They're not really handsy, but they just, I don't know. They're crazy. Gilmore especially, man. He might be the best cornerback in the league.
Yeah, he's very, very good. He was good with Buffalo. The problem with Gilmore in Buffalo was that he just didn't want to be there.
Yeah,
he just didn't want to be there. But
seems to be a lot of people's problems in Buffalo. Everybody starts in Buffalo and with this huge potential, and then they go somewhere and they're a superstar.
You're not lying. You're not lying. Trust me, we know all about it. So, it was actually a 64-yard. I keep saying 70 because it's close enough, but it was a 64-yard touchdown if you want to get technical. So, without that, Jones throws for less than, 100 yards in the game. So that just tells you how bad it was. All right, so that's the end of that game. We are going to do our previews. I guess I will start it off with my first preview, and my first preview of this week is the Panthers-Bucks. So, Kyle Allen the dude makes me nervous. I got to be honest. I know this is a plus matchup against a Buccaneers defense that really, for especially the past couple of weeks has looked really, really bad. But this matchup for him makes me a little bit nervous. I just think he has not looked good, and I think if the Buccaneers, score some points in this game, they will be at home. It makes me even more nervous because if he has to come from behind, has to throw a lot, I think he's susceptible to a whole lot of turnovers. But in a tough, if I'm, there's a couple of guys on bye this week. If you are really hurting at quarterback, you had Breeze and you picked up Josh Allen or some scenario like that, and that you needed to start Kyle Allen. I wouldn't be supremely confident, but it is what it is. At this point, bye weeks are going to start kicking in. You're going to have to start guys like Kyle Allen. So don't love him this week. Don't hate him completely, but it makes me a little bit nervous. DJ Moore is going to be going up against Hargraves. He's just been bad this year, so I could see DJ Moore having an okay game. Greg Olsen had a great game against this team, the first week. DJ Moore had a pretty good game. So did Curtis Samuel. But the thing is, that was with Cam Newton, so you can't really, take those numbers into account. McCaffrey is just a beast every single week, so you don't ever have to worry about McCaffrey. And that's basically it for that side of the ball. On the Tampa Bay side, Chris Godwin has been one of the best receivers in football, and he will go going up against Ross Cockrell, which, I've been telling you guys that Cockrell is, not the greatest of cover corners. So, I think Chris Godwin, the last time they played, Chris Godwin, I think, had like 70 yards and a touchdown. So, I fully expect that basically same performance or maybe a little bit better. Mike Evans will be going up against Dante Jackson. And Dante Jackson has been just, he's been good this year. He hasn't been great, but he's been good. So, I think Mike Evans, they will make it a point to get him involved this week. And, he's definitely a guy that you're starting. You're starting him every week. Even though he gave you a donut last week, you're definitely starting him. O.J. Howard, we already told you, is droppable. I don't like this matchup. Eric Reed is a very good corner in the league. And, Shaq Thompson has been very good this year. So, for me, it's not a situation where I'm starting O.J. Howard, period, at all. And then the running back, Jameis Winston is definitely, he's been playing very good past couple of weeks. You're definitely starting Jameis if you got him. And then the running backs in this game, they didn't do much the first time these two teams met. And Luke Kuechly has been phenomenal this year. He's been basically stopping everything. Brian Burns also been pretty good. And like I said, Shaq Thompson's been very good this year. So, I'm not really interested in starting any of the guys. If I had to start one of them, it would be Jones. I just think he is the most dynamic of the three. Yeah, Peyton Barber did get most of the action the last time that they played. He was the guy that they grinded it out with at the end to win the game. So, I know Peyton Barber had a pretty good game. I think it was like 70 and a touchdown. Me and Dan were just talking about it. I think it was 70 and a touchdown. But, Jones has looked better, and I think they're going to start giving him more and more work. And then Ngombo Boale, you basically can't start. The Panthers defense in this game, I know a lot of people are starting them, but at Tampa Bay, I don't really like it. Makes me nervous, but Jameis Winston is always susceptible to a 3 interception game. So, if you absolutely have to, Carolina's defense is, they're not a terrible defense to start this week. And that's basically it for this game.
All right, I'll jump into the first game that I'm going to be doing, and that's going to be Atlanta in Arizona. Two teams that do not have good records, but this game's got a high over/under. Both of these defenses are atrocious, and you got stars on the field. So I mean, it's not you got bad records, but it ain't like the Dolphins and the Redskins game. You have guys that are fantasy relevant here. I'll start with the Atlanta side of the ball. I love Matt Ryan this week. I got him ranked number 10. Cardinals secondary, just Cardinals defense in general is just not very good. Matt Ryan should have a good game. Julio Jones, obviously he's going to be, top receiver this week. He should absolutely go off against Arizona. Calvin Ridley, like Calvin Ridley this week. Sanu is definitely an option too. I think, when you have bad defenses like this, I think there's plenty of room for everybody to have a big day and eat a good breakfast, or we should say lunch on this one. And even, and Hooper's just been great. Hooper's a pretty much a every week tight end starter. I mean, unless you're carrying 2 stud tight ends, and if some case you are, and if you have Hooper and you have like Disley, you should probably look to trade one of them guys, because they're both lock-in starters. I mean, you could probably bolster up your wide receiver 2 position or something like that. So yeah, you're definitely starting Hooper here. And Devontae Freeman, I mean, he's still got to be in there in your lineup, especially in a game like this. He has not been good this year. We've been talking about it week in, week out. Just been no running lanes, just not been the Devontae Freeman we're used to seeing. But he's you probably don't have many guys that you drafted as high as him, and so I mean he's probably going to be be locked in as one of your starters. On the Arizona side of the ball, I'm very high on Kyler this week. I actually have him number 5. I don't know if necessarily I like him more in the passing game than Matt Ryan. I think both of these guys should go for 300 yards. But I just think that Kyler ahead of other guys because he's got that ability to run. Him, Lamar Jackson, they're dual threats every time they're on the field. I think Kyler can easily get 8 to 10 rushes, at least a rushing touchdown. I actually like Kyler for 4 total touchdowns this game. I think he's going to go off 2-3 rushing, 2-3 passing. So I'm big on Kyler this week. I don't care who your backup is. Make sure Kyler's in your lineup. This should be the week that he, finally breaks out and has he's been consistently decent. I mean, he hasn't been bad. Like I think Kev mentioned last week that he's been I think he's like a number 12 or 13 overall right now. He might even be a smidge higher than that. But so he hasn't been in the middle or the bottom.
Number 9.
Number 9. Okay. And I have him on my team. So I obviously follow this guy every single, drive. And it seems like it's because that offense has not been anywhere close to potent as they're expected, but he's been the one bright spot. I mean, he hasn't looked great, but he hasn't looked bad, and he's got that running ability. And when you're in a fantasy football league and you have a guy that can rush the ball 10 times or more, he's going to definitely, even on a bad day, he's going to put up 20 fantasy points. So I love Kyler this week. I absolutely love Fitz. Trufant is out. I mean, that secondary already is horrible and beat up, and Trufant is out, so they're going to be. I don't know who they're going to play. I don't know who they're going to be able to cover. I mean, this over/under is like it's 51 right now. It might even go up to 55 if once the news that Trufant gets out and there's nobody out there that's going to be able to. It could just be an all-out air attack this game. I mean. David Johnson is a good running back, but he hasn't been really that productive on the ground. He's been more productive in checkdowns, and I think they could make it a point to get him lots of checkdowns this game. Open up the middle of the field. But yeah, speaking of David Johnson, definitely want to start him. And the only other Cardinal possibly is Kirk. I think he's been coming on pretty strong, and this could be a game for him to go off too.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add. I think Dan is definitely right about Kyler. I would, especially if Kirk goes in this game, I really like Kyler because I think Kirk could really be good. But yeah, I like Fitz. I think Fitz is going to be great in this game, and this is going to be a fun game to watch. This is 2 bad defenses and 2 pretty good offenses. I think, the Arizona Cardinals haven't been a great offense so far this year, but Atlanta's defense is just, like Dan said, terror horrible. So, it is what it is. They're going to give up some points. So it's going to be a fun week. So since Kev is not with us, we are going to do his games. So we'll kind of both hit on the Philly-Minnesota game. That's Kevin's first game of the week. So, I'll start it off. I think that this game is going to be a little higher scoring than I think people think. The Eagles and Minnesota Vikings, the past couple of years have actually been pretty high scoring games. I think last year, what was the score of the last year's game, Kev? Dan, it was like what, 20? I think it was 28 to 20.
Yeah, it wasn't quite as high as the playoff game from them a couple years ago, but they both were in the 20s, I think.
Yeah. So, this are two teams that, they know each other because they played each other the past couple of years. And I think that, the Eagles defense has been pretty rough against the pass. And, Kirk Cousins has taken, like Kev said the other day, Kirk Cousins has, I think he said it was a 5-3 record against the Eagles all time. So it's a team.
Yeah,
that
he burned
knows.
us. He burned us in Washington. He always killed us in Washington. As long as it's a 1:00 game, you put Kirk Cousins on primetime. Yeah, anybody beats Kirk Cousins on primetime. But on 1:00 games, which Eagles and Washington mostly did get 1:00 games. Washington's wasn't really a marketable team. So 1:00 games, he seems to shine. And in Washington, he killed a lot of teams in Washington. That's how he got that contract.
Yeah,
he was really good in Washington.
Yeah, he did. All right, so looking at it, it's basically the Diggs and Thielen show. I think in this game, I know a lot of people are scared to play Diggs because of just how hit or miss he is. I don't think this is a miss game. I think this is a hit game. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have to come out throwing. I don't, like Kev said the other day, you don't beat the Eagles on the ground. So, Dalvin Cook, I do think is going to be viable in this game. He's viable every week. He's every week starter for you. But I think it's going to be more of the passing game that he's involved in that's going to help you out. Diggs is going to be good. Thielen is going to be good. I wouldn't start Kyle Rudolph. I just would avoid that completely. And I think Kirk Cousins is going to be good. So, that's basically it for the Viking side of the ball. And I wouldn't play either of these defenses either. I don't know how you feel, Dan, but I think this could be a higher scoring game, and I wouldn't risk either one of these defenses.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. The Eagles obviously looked great last week because it was the Jets, but they haven't been a good defense this year. That it was just a good week for the Eagles being the team that they played. And Minnesota, who has been a very good defense this year, they're gonna have their hands full with the Eagles. I mean, it's the Eagles put up points. They're gonna score 20 something every week, so I wouldn't play the Vikings either.
Yeah. Zach Ertz is one of my favorite tight ends this week on DFS. So if you play daily fantasy, I definitely would throw Ertz in a couple of lineups. Alshon Jeffrey is, Alshon Jeffrey is probably one of the safest, wide receivers to play in fantasy. He's never going to, get you those crazy blow-up games where he goes for like 150 and 3 touchdowns. That's not his game. He's going to be in the 60 to 100 range, anywhere in between there, and a touchdown, maybe 2 in a good game. So I like Alshon this week. I think he could definitely get you, 60 to 80 yards and a possible touchdown this week. So I definitely am starting him, as a wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 2. Carson Wentz is just Carson Wentz, man. He's just, to watch the guy play, he's awesome. There's no other way to say it. The dude is just awesome. He makes plays when you don't expect plays to be made. 2 weeks ago, I think the biggest thing that stood out was, he only threw for 160 yards, but he had 3 touchdowns, against the Green Bay Packers. And to me, that's a sign of a really good quarterback, especially a really good fantasy quarterback, a guy that doesn't have to throw for 1,000,000 yards to score you a whole lot of points. So, Wentz is a guy that's going to, be in your lineup every single week, and I'm not scared to play him against anybody. I know last week he got game scripted out. The Jets just are a terrible team, and the defense was scoring, so he didn't need to score. But, regardless of that fact, if Carson Wentz needed to throw 3 touchdowns last week, he would have. He just didn't have to. So it's one of those game script things. And I don't think this is going to be a game script that, doesn't favor Carson Wentz. For the running backs on the Eagles side of the ball, it's still, if you need a flex play, I would start Jordan Howard. I would also start Sanders if you needed a flex this week because, there are, is it 4 teams on bye, Dan?
Yeah, 4 teams.
Yeah, 4 teams on bye, so you could possibly need a flex play, and Sanders is, to me, that's what he is. He's a flex. Neither of these guys are a number 2 running back. They're both flexes to me.
Yeah, I agree. Deshaun Jackson's still out, getting closer to coming back, but still out, and there's no other really receiver. I mean, Nelson Aguilar he had a couple good weeks when Alshon wasn't in there. But with Alshon back, that's Carson's go-to guy, him and Ertz. So you're not starting Aguilar. You're basically just sticking with Ertz and Alshon on the Eagles, and obviously Wentz too. He's your every week starter.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, I guess I'll pick up.
You want to just go with Kev's second game? It's New
Yeah, I'll
Orleans,
just go Kev second
Jacksonville.
game, and then we'll just loop it back around.
Yeah.
All right, so let me actually look here.
It is New Orleans and Jacksonville.
New Orleans and Jacksonville. Yep. All right, New Orleans and Jacksonville. This actually should be a decent game, with the way Minshew's been playing. The battle of the backups. We'll call this one the battle of the backup game.
Yeah.
Bridgewater. He the 4 touchdowns was a great week for him. But to me, I have him ranked 16, so I don't have him ranked in my QB1 section. But I still think he's more of a game manager. I think that was just a great game for him. I still think he's more of a game manager. I still think they're going to rely on just everything they have. Their defense, their run game, a little bit passing when needed. I think they're just a really balanced team. They might be the most balanced team in the NFL right now, all around. So I don't know if I would really go with Bridgewater. Obviously, Kamara is still questionable. If he's in there, you're starting him. Murray, what they said is questionable, but he was only missing today not questionable. He missed today because of, I think they said it was a non-injury. I was getting updates left and right all day today, so my phone's still going off probably from updates. Definitely been a very, like Steve said on the news, but definitely been a very update day as far as injuries and questionables go. But if Kamara doesn't play, then you definitely are putting Murray in there because he's going to get the workload. One of those two guys is going to get the bulk of the carries. You're starting Michael Thomas. He's your every week starter. I like the way Ted Ginn's been coming on lately, but I'm still not starting him until he proves some consistency. That's pretty much it on the Saints side of the ball. On the Jaguar side of the ball, you got your 3 right now. Minshew he's been great, but I'm not going to start him against the Saints day. I have Minshew I got him at 18. He would be higher because he has been hot, but it's just the Saints defense to me has been really good. So I'm not going to start Minshew, but I am starting DJ Chark. He's a top 10 receiver in the entire league right now in fantasy. So he's your every week starter. And obviously Leonard Fournette is an every week starter. He's a top 5 running back in fantasy right now. So probably going to sit Dede this week, but Dede could get some looks because if Lattimore is going to be on Chark, that's going to open things up for Dede, and Minshew's got to throw the ball somewhere. So it's a tough call. Chark's been the go-to guy. Chark's been the numbers guy, but if you're going by defensive matchups, then Chark could have a long day, and Dede could be the one that gets the bulk of targets. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah, definitely. I've been harping on P.J. Williams all year. He is the Saints slot corner, and he's just been giving up a lot of points to the slot position. So Dede in 3 wide receiver sets, which the Jaguars have been in a lot more lately. Is a guy that I think is going to see the field a whole lot, and I think PJ is going to have a tough time covering him. So like Dan said, I actually think I would start Minshew this week, depending on the bye week replacement guys that you need. So I do kind of like Minshew in this game. It's at home. I always like quarterbacks at home whenever I can get them, especially if I'm trying to have a replacement player. So if you picked up Minshew this week to play him, I like that he's at home better than, if he was on the road in New Orleans. So New Orleans they do kind of split, their games. It's not just Drew Brees that plays better at home. It's the whole team. The whole team plays better at home. And I think the Jaguars can get on him in this game. I like Minshew. I like Chark. I even like Chris Conley, honestly, a little bit this week. If you're desperate, wouldn't mind starting him. But like Dan said, Westbrook definitely could be a guy that gets off. Leonard Fournette, I think, is one of those games where he could be a touchdown or two. I know he hasn't been scoring a lot of touchdowns this year, and the New Orleans Saints has been a very good run defense. But at home, Leonard Fournette always seems to play a little bit better, and I think the Jaguars are going to be able to move the ball in this game, so I'm not worried about any of that. And like Dan said, on the other side of the ball, it's Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and I would play Cook if I was desperate at tight end. But other than that, I'm kind of staying away from all the other guys.
Yep.
Yep. And then the two defenses, if you have the Jaguars or New Orleans, you're probably starting both of them.
Yeah, this could definitely be a ball possession type game. I don't expect to see a whole lot of 350-yard passing, 3 touchdown passing outings from these two. Definitely more ground and pound.
Definitely. All right. So our next game is going to be Dolphins and
This
Redskins.
better be 24 seconds.
Yeah, this is going to be real short. These are just really two really bad defenses. And, in this game, really, if you are desperate, you're starting Preston Williams. If you're desperate, you're starting, Devontae Parker. I would start both of those guys because, like I said, both of these defenses are terrible. And that's it. Like Drake, I would start if I absolutely needed a flex. And, like I said, it doesn't sound like Albert Wilson is playing. So if Albert Wilson was playing, I would definitely tell you to start Albert Wilson because I like Albert Wilson. He has big play upside anytime he touches the ball. But, that's it for the Dolphin side of the ball. On the Redskins side of the ball, Scary Terry is definitely somebody I'm playing. Terry McLaurin should be good in this game. And that's basically it. Trey Quinn hasn't been good. In DFS purposes, I would start Jeremy Sprinkle. He is, ridiculously cheap on FanDuel, and we all found out that there's not going to be any Vernon Davis. So he is the only healthy tight end on this team. You know what I mean? Chris Thompson and Adrian Peterson, I think, are both viable this week because, they're talking about giving AP 50 touches in this game, which the Dolphins defense just can't stop him. So, or can't stop, any running game for that matter. So, I would play AP as a flex. I would play Chris Thompson as a flex. And that's it. I'm not starting Case Keenum. I'm not starting Trey Quinn. I'm not starting, Paul Richardson. Just guys that I don't want to start. And if you are absolutely desperate at defense, I would pick up the Washington Redskins defense or the Miami Dolphins defense because I think both these teams are bad. So, if you were desperate, I would play both of these defenses. Either one of these defenses. I think you're going to see a defensive or special team score too because there's going to be some sloppy play. There's going to be some turnovers. I know I said last week about Chris Thompson, and I'll repeat it again. Chris Thompson only in PPR. I know there's not a ton of standard leagues out there, but if you are in a standard league, Chris Thompson does not get many carries. The dude's lucky to get 5 carries a game, but he gets 10 targets every single game. So PPR, definitely, Thompson's a good flex play. Yep. Next game. We have I got the 4 o'clockers. I don't know. I don't think I did that on purpose. I think I just was looking at the games and they ended up being the 4 o'clockers. So I got San Francisco Rams.
Yep. San Francisco and Rams. This one should be a good game. San Francisco's looked so good, and the Rams have looked so bad lately. Rams are -3. They are home, but it's got a 50.5 over. So they're not really expecting these. I don't think you start the Niners defense in this one. As bad as the Rams have been, Gurley's doubtful, so Gurley probably isn't going to play. It's still the Rams. It's still a team that can go off for 35, 40 points any week. It's just, so as hot as the San Francisco D has been, I don't think you can start them. As far as their offensive players go, the Rams defense has been horrible. So I love Jimmy G. I think I have Jimmy G pretty high this week. Like Jimmy G against I actually have him 15th because I think that, I think they're gonna continue to do what they've been working for him, and that's just running with the ball. So definitely Breida and Coleman. I know they're both 1 and 2. Did they get someone else back too, or?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I know McKinnon's still on injury reserve, but I thought that they had some. Yeah, so you're definitely
Kevin
starting
Coleman. But he played last week.
He played late. He looked good last week too. So you're starting Coleman. You're starting Breida. They both had great games last week. And like I said, the Rams defense is not very good. They do have the 2 good secondary guys who have looked really bad, but they're veterans. They can lock it down at any time. So the only receiver I really like from San Fran, obviously, is Kittle. He's an every week starter, the tight end position. You know, you got they got a bunch of young guys that need to prove themselves. You know, Pettis and Debo. You know, these guys have all shined a little here or there, but none of these guys are consistent enough for me to really put them in as a starter. On the other side of the ball, the Rams. I don't know how I feel about Jared Goff this week. I have him at 17. Just because that Niners defense is stifling. So, and I think you have better options than Jared Goff this week. So, don't really like Jared Goff. I do think that if Gurley starts, you're going to have to play him. If not, Malcolm Brown is probably going to be a starter. Just, you know, the offense, like I said, the potential to move the ball is still always there, and you want to make sure that you have a Rams running back in the lineup, and you're gonna start. Obviously, I think Cooks is out, right? Concussion. He hasn't passed concussion. He hasn't passed concussion protocol. So Cooks is out, and you're starting Woods. You're starting Kupp. Kupp's been great. I think this could be a week that Kupp could get off the schneid a little. He's been on an awesome schneid, the good schneid. So I think this is a week that he might actually come back down to earth a little, but it's a tough game. I mean, this game could go either way, so it's really tough to predict, but you just got to start the guys that have been consistently doing well. You know, I wouldn't take any real chances this week. I think there's other options out there, you know, with all the names we're throwing out there on other teams, to start basically on teams that are playing worse defenses. You know, this Niners defense they've been so good. It's not a team to really take a chance on.
Yep. The only thing I will say is I think one of the wide receivers for the 49ers is going to have a good game. You know, I don't know if it's Godwin. I don't know if it's Samuels.
Goodwin.
Yeah, Goodwin. I always say Godwin.
The track boy.
Exactly. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I do know that Akeem Talib is not going to be in this game, which is a big deal because now they have to start Troy Hill, which is not a good thing. And, you know, for me, one of those guys could burn him deep. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys gets a long touchdown in this game. You know, Godwin is the long ball guy, so it wouldn't surprise me if he has a long touchdown in this game. And then, you know, George Kittle is just an animal. I don't care what defense it is. He's going to be awesome. You know, at home, George Kittle always seems to have a very good game at home in, you know, the confines of San Francisco.
They're in L.A.
Oh, they are in L.A.
They're in LA, but he's still good, so it doesn't matter. It's Kittle.
It's Kittle.
It's Kittle.
Exactly.
You don't have any better options at tight end than Kittle. If you do, I don't know who you drafted that early, but because you obviously got Kittle super early, so I don't know who you got.
I don't know what the hell I was looking. Oh, you know what it was? I was looking at Arizona, Atlanta, right next to each other. I was thinking Atlanta, Arizona. But yeah, San Francisco still. You know, George Kittle is definitely a play. Let's see what else. I think that's basically it. Like Dan said, Garoppolo, you know, you're playing him this week. You know, Breida broke off a 89-yard touchdown last week. And, you know,
80 and change.
Yeah, some 80 something. But, you know, he has that capability. Matt Breida is a very good running back, and Tevin Coleman.
He looked lightning fast, man.
Yeah,
he really did look good. Then they said they said that was the fastest run this year. I think 23 and change, 23 miles per hour.
Yeah, I didn't even see that.
He looked super. Yeah, I think they said it was the fastest run. All right, what we got for the next game?
All right, so we will do Kevin's. Well, let's do this. How about I do Dallas Jets and you do Green Bay Lions? Those are the last two of Kevin's games. I'll start off first with Dallas Jets, and then we'll just wrap up Kev's games that way. So, in this game, we're going to do Dallas and the Jets. For me, it's the Jets are at home, which to me really doesn't make a difference. You know, the Cowboys have not looked good the past couple of weeks. They really haven't. You know, Dak has looked pretty terrible. You know, mediocre at best. You know, last week against Green Bay, they were just down so many points. He just had to throw. So, you know, that 350, yard game and whatever 2 touchdown game that he had was not, super impressive. He looked bad. But for fantasy purposes, that's what you want out of your fantasy quarterback. And, he's definitely a viable fantasy starter, basically rest of season. So I wouldn't have a problem starting Dak in this game, obviously. For the rest of the Cowboys, I know Cooper has been limited this week, but you're definitely starting Cooper because, we saw what Cooper did last week. He can just he has those games where he just blows up, and you never know when those games are going to be, but you want him in your lineup every single week to have those games because he does have those games. Gallup, I actually really like in this game. I think Gallup is going to, see a whole lot of, Tremaine Johnson, who has just been bad all year long. He's really been bad since last year. He just he's not been good. You can clearly see why the Chiefs didn't re-sign him because he has just been getting worse and worse. And, I could see Michael Gallup having a really good game. I'm starting him in almost every one of my DFS lineups. I really like him this week. Jason Witten, if you are hurting at tight end, is a tight end I would start. He's going to see a whole lot of Blake Cashman, who's been giving up some points to the tight end position. And Jamal Adams is a very good safety, but, he won't see exclusively Jason Witten, in this game. He just doesn't cover the corner like that all the time. They kind of put him on like the really good corners, and Jason Witten is not a really good corner. He's a really good tight end. He's just at this point in his career, he's just a jag. But yeah, I'm not scared of this. I'm not scared of this Jaguars defense. This Jets defense. They're just, they're okay. On the Jets side of the ball, Sam Darnold is back, so I do expect this to be a closer game than people are thinking. The Jets with Sam Darnold are just better. They're a better team with him. So I do think Le'Veon Bell in this game is viable because he's back. I even think Robbie Anderson is viable in this game if you need a flex wide receiver. I would definitely throw him in especially some DFS lineups, some GPPs, because I think he could have a good game with Darnold back. Demaryius Thomas got 9 targets last week. I don't know how often that's going to be the case, but we'll see after this game. He's not a guy I'm starting this week, but definitely a guy to keep your eye out for. Jamison Crowder with Sam Darnold in the first week had 17 targets. So look for Crowder to get at least 8 to 10 targets in this game. I just think he is probably going to be the most heavily targeted wide receiver on this team, especially with Sam Darnold back. And that's it for me. That's it for these. This game. I would start the Cowboys defense just because, they seem to be opportunistic every once in a while, and they get some sacks because DeMarcus Lawrence is just an animal. And he will be going up against Chuma Edoga, however the hell you say that.
Did well on that one.
Exactly. He, not a very good right tackle. Lawrence is a left defensive end, so he's going to see a whole lot of him, and that could be bad. So that's about it.
All right. So I'm going to do Kev's last game, and then we'll wrap up our games. Detroit, Green Bay. This is the Monday night game, so this one should be, these games are always good. Green Bay normally comes out ahead, and especially when it's in Green Bay. But they're good games to watch. So, this is where they actually had the first of his many Hail Marys was I think on a primetime game when in Green Bay against Detroit. It actually might have been in Detroit. He threw like 72 yards.
Dude,
just
like all in the air, bro. That was a great throw. I'll never forget that throw.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Start with the Detroit side of the ball. Green Bay's defense has been good, but Stafford's been really good too. Where do I have Stafford? I got Stafford 14, so he's a potential starter unless you have somebody better. If you obviously drafted Stafford, I don't think a lot of people drafted him as their number one, but a lot of people probably may have moved him up number one because he's been so good this year. So he's definitely a potential starter. You're definitely starting Galladay. You definitely start in Kerryon Johnson. And Marvin Jones he's another hot and cold guy. Galladay is obviously their go-to. But Marvin Jones has had a game or two where he's been real good. So, I don't mind him as a flex play, but just another guy that I think you may have better options at. on the Green Bay side of the ball.
Hold up. TJ Hawkinson. How you,
Oh,
he's
Hawkins
gonna
is
be,
back. He's not hurt, but he's only got 2 touchdowns this. Well, he's got 2 touchdowns, but he obviously he was hurt, but TJ's been TJ's been he went cold for a while there, and then he had actually he got that touchdown early in the game before he went out with the concussion. So TJ is an option. I mean, obviously he's got his ceiling is really really high. We know how talented he is from that first game. So I like TJ. I think he's going to be probably middle of my tight end pack. I think actually on a primetime game he shows up. So I don't have a problem starting TJ this week at all. Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers. You're drafting Aaron Rodgers. You're not ever setting Aaron Rodgers. Devontae Adams is still out, I believe. Allison and MVS. I definitely think you're starting MVS. Allison's tricky. A lot of people, we actually get a lot of questions. I think I've been reading a lot of questions on whether or not to start Allison because, is his workload going to be a lot heavier now? What kind of chemistry does he have with Aaron Rodgers? And I wouldn't mind Allison in a flex play. But I think MVS is, just from watching these games, MVS is clearly the better receiver this year. We all thought Allison was going to be the number 2 on the team, but hasn't turned out that way through the first 5 weeks. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen going forward? I mean, I don't think either of them are head over heels better than the other. I mean, obviously Adams is, clearly the number 1 by far. It's not even close. So those two are just like a wait and see remainder of the year. And I really like Aaron Jones. I think coming off that 4 touchdown game, I know, he beat up on Dallas pretty good, but I think he can do the same thing to Detroit. I think Dallas is a generally a really good run stopping defense with their linebackers, and he had a day on them. I think he can. Green Bay being at home, I think I'm not saying he's going to repeat 4 touchdowns, but I think he can have himself another good day. I think they're starting to see now that they're going to give him 80% of the work. I know, Steve, you have Jared Jones in our league, and it was frustrating the first few weeks because we saw so much Jamal Williams, and we don't know why. It was kind of like what the first game when you watched. It's bad analogy because Chicago Bears just stink in general, but when we saw Mike Davis out there for so much, and a little bit of Montgomery, you saw Montgomery actually looked faster and quicker. Same thing with the Packers, but on just a much better scale. Aaron Jones is clearly the better running back. He has shown it every single time he touches the ball compared to Williams. And I think that it just took some time, but I think that Green Bay has realized it, and they're gonna ride their boy now. Williams will just be spelling him when he needs, huffs and puffs. And that's about it. I mean, Graham seems to get, Jimmy Graham seems to get has games where he gets a lot of targets, and then he has games where he gets no targets. So, he's just not he's not consistent. He could catch a touchdown here or there, but you just don't know what you're going to get out of Jimmy.
Yep, I agree. I think that was a pretty good breakdown. The biggest problem I have with Jimmy Graham is, like Dan said, he's just way too damn inconsistent. You know what I mean? Like, against the Eagles, the dude goes off. And then, he's had 2 games where he gave you a donut this year. So, he's a little bit frustrating for fantasy. I would try to find a better option if you can. If you can't, Jimmy is definitely an option, but just
don't be surprised if he gets 1 catch on 3 targets, because that seems to be what half of his games look like.
Exactly. So if you want that, then go get Jimmy. You know what I mean? But yeah, I agree with Dan with that breakdown. I like his analysis on that breakdown. So let's go to, I guess, my next game. And my next game is the Hawks-Browns. Actually, this is a game that I picked because I actually think Baker Mayfield is going to have a bounce-back game. I know most people probably wouldn't agree with me. Most people are probably going to be like, nah, I don't see it, Stevie P. But,
Bounce back as in like have like a really good game in general, or like
Yeah, I think
better than his last couple weeks, because
yeah, I think he gets like
you really can't
300.
be worse than he was last week.
Oh yeah, he was terrible last week. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean, when you really break that game down last week, he was, they went to San Francisco, so it was, they had to travel halfway across the world, to play a really good San Francisco team coming off a bye week. So, that to me, that game just had tobacco written all over it. It was one of those things where, you look at that game and you can clearly, see that game might have been coming. This week, I think they're pissed off. I think that I don't think Baker Mayfield is a bad quarterback. I think Baker Mayfield is a little bit gun shy because the offensive line is bad. But I don't think that this Seahawks offensive line is all that great, other than Jadeveon Clowney. Ansah really hasn't been that good this year. He has just been okay. And then Quentin Jefferson has been pretty good in their D line. But I think that I think the Browns can have a good game because I think they'll be able to protect Baker a little bit better than they have been able to, so far this year. Nick Chubb I love in this game. I think Jarvis Landry has been, just a beast the past couple weeks for Baker, and Baker's looking for him. I think this is a bounce back game for Odell Beckham. I think Beckham is going to have a big game in this game. Shaq Griffin just can't cover Odell Beckham. And I think that the Browns are going to make it a point to get the ball in Odell's hands, more than they have the past couple of weeks, maybe some bubble screens and things like that to get Odell going. And, I just think that this Browns offense is actually going to have a good game. I'm playing Baker Mayfield in large, GPP tournaments because I think he is going to have a big game, and I don't think a lot of people are going to play him because they're just worried about what he did last week. But to me, that was one of those games where, you could definitely see that one happening. You didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was, but it was definitely, something that you could see happening. On the other side of the ball in this game, DK Metcalf is a threat to score a long touchdown every week. So, if you needed a flex this week, Metcalf is not a guy that I would mind starting. Tyler Lockett is an every week locked-in starter. He's the number 9 wide receiver in football. He's just been awesome. Some of the catches he makes are just unbelievable, and he's going to be good again this week. They don't have anybody that can cover Lockett in this game. Will Disley, I love this week. I think Will Disley is going to have a very big game. Jermaine Whitehead, I've been attacking all year long in the wide receiver, cornerback matchups. I put tight ends at the bottom of that. And, that's a matchup that I'm definitely going after this week. And Mac Wilson has just, he was good for like a week or two. And, ever since Kirksey's gone out, Mac Wilson has been the, replacement. And for the past 2 weeks, he's just looked really bad. That touchdown, Matt Breida, that was actually a Wilson missed tackle touchdown. He should have filled that hole, and he was just lost in the sauce. So, Will Disley, I think is going to eat in this game. Chris Carson, I like this week. I don't think he's going to have a huge game, but I could definitely see him getting 80 yards and a possible touchdown. So he's an every week starter. You're definitely starting him. And I left Russell Wilson for last because I think Russell Wilson's going to be the, number 1 or number 2 fantasy quarterback this week. I just think that this Browns defense is, easier to throw on than it is to run on. And I think the, Seahawks are smart enough to know that, they can beat this team through the air. So I could definitely see Russell Wilson doing his thing and getting, 300 and 2-3 touchdowns in this game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think both teams are going to be able to score on each other. And, the Seahawks going all the way to, Cleveland to play, I think is going to be one of those things, West Coast team going to East Coast. And it's going to be a rough for the defense. So I like both offenses in this game. I wouldn't start either defense.
Every time we say the Browns are going to have a big game and score a lot of points, they put up like 7 points.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody's saying they're going to have a big game. I think I might be the only fantasy analyst that's saying that, but I do think this is going to be a much better game for Cleveland.
There's just so much talent on the team. I mean, you got to eventually think that, I mean, what did you say last week? You kind of said that you predicted the Will Fuller thing, and I said the card's got to come out eventually. The guy's talented. You threw out those stats about how much he's actually on the field, and you just look at how much he was on the field, like 96% of the time, and you almost can't, with how good Deshaun Watson is and how good that offense is, it almost was unbelievable to hear that he, when you look at how little his stats were, like 40, 30, 40 yards a game consistently the whole entire year. It's like, how is this even possible? And then there he goes and explodes for 220 and 3 touchdowns. So it was just a matter of odds. And I kind of agree with you on this one. I kind of feel like the Browns, even as much of a train wreck as they might be internally, you still have a squad full of really talented people. If Baker can get his head out of his ass and just make plays to these superstars, then sky's still pretty high for them as far as offensively goes, but defensively they're a mess. So I don't really think that they're in the league of maybe the Ravens in that division. I mean the Ravens haven't looked tremendous the last few weeks like they did in the beginning of the season, but still early.
Still early.
All right. So who we got next? Next up on
your next game is
Denver and Tennessee.
Yep.
All right. Man. I picked this one.
Yeah, this is gonna be a defensive.
Yeah, over under 40. I think it'll be a stretch to get there. Denver. I got Denver ranked really high on defense this year. I think, or on this week. I think I got them ranked like second or third because I like Denver's defense this week. They seem to play really good at Mile High always. And aside from 1 or 2 weeks, Mariota has not been good. We've obviously talked about that multiple times. So I think they're going to get after him. They're definitely going to make him uncomfortable. The one bright spot on Tennessee is Derrick Henry. He's your every week starter. He's a top 10 running back right now. If I don't think that you're ever going to take him out. And he's probably the only guy on Tennessee that you really are, have. Well, Delaney Walker. Him and Delaney Walker are your every week starters, and that's it. You don't know what A.J. Brown is, hot and cold. Corey Davis had the one good week, so Deion Lewis has been, out in outer space somewhere. Who knows where Deion Lewis is even? He's the backup running back, but. They bring him in for third down and they're really not even giving him any check down. So Deion Lewis is not even a flex start considerable. I thought maybe when the year started in, PPR leagues, he's always seemed to get a lot of work on third downs and pretty good with receptions, but it hasn't happened this year. On Denver side of the ball, Emmanuel Sanders, Sutton's been good. Sutton's been good. I mean,
very good.
Yeah, he has been. He's been the one big surprise on Denver. I mean, we kind of didn't know what we were going to get out of Philip Lindsay, Royce Freeman. It looks like over the last 2-3 weeks, Lindsay is really grasping that number one running back position from Freeman. Freeman's still getting work. It's not a 70-30 yet. It is still a 60-40. Freeman's still getting a good amount of work, but he's just not making as much out of his work as Lindsay is. Like Freeman's going 8 carries for 30-40 yards, 10 carries for 30-40 yards, whereas Lindsay's getting, but Freeman's getting a lot of the the receiving work, but Lindsay's getting 15 carries for 75 yards. He's getting the bigger plays. Lindsay's getting the touchdowns. Freeman doesn't even have a touchdown this year, so you're definitely, I don't think you're starting Freeman until he can show that he gets you in the end zone and gets bigger chunk yards. And Lindsay you're starting. Like I said, you're starting. I don't have a problem with starting Sutton, and definitely don't have a problem starting Emmanuel Sanders. Noah Fan is still not irrelevant at all.
Yeah, I agree. The one guy I would throw on my flex on the Titan side of the ball is A.J. Brown. It's Isaac Yadam, I think is how you pronounce it, has just not been very good this year, and Delaney Walker also, I think Delaney Walker is, I don't think he's going to be great. I don't think he's going to be bad, but, if I, needed a tight end, I would throw Delaney in there. So, that's basically it for me. I agree with Dan. I think, Derrick Henry is the main focus on this team that I want in my lineups, and the rest of the guys are either flex plays or just not plays at all. All right, so I'm going to do my last game, and then Dan will wrap it up with Pittsburgh, LA. And I am going to do Texans Chiefs. So Texans Chiefs, we all have heard it all week. This is going to be one of the games of the year, and I agree. I don't see how this is not a high scoring game. I've tried to look up some stats that I thought would be relevant to maybe say that Kansas City can, stop the Texans, or the Texans can stop Kansas City. And the one stat I did come up with was that the Kansas City Chiefs, since week 7 of last year, have not let up a 100-yard receiver at home. And the last player to do that was A.J. Green. So, week 7 of last year, A.J. Green had 117 total yards. He did not have a touchdown in that game. Andy Dalton actually only threw for 70 yards in that game, with A.J. having 117. So, and if you look at the opposing quarterbacks, only one quarterback in that span has had 300 yards, and that was Phillip Rivers. But none of the wide receivers in that game had a touchdown. I think that was week 13 of last year. Phillip Rivers had a 300-yard passing game at home against Kansas City. Well, when Kansas City was at home. And, that's it. So really, Kansas City at home has been a pretty good, defense, with past statistics. But I just think you have to throw that out the window this week. I really do. DeAndre Hopkins is just so due for a huge game. Will Fuller, coming off of last week's game, looked like a just complete animal. Brashad Breeland there's no way, and they're saying that Breeland is going to shadow Hopkins in this game, which I just think is a mistake. I mean, DeAndre is going to have a big game. I'm sorry. Just to me, there's no way he doesn't have a big game here, especially if Brashad Breeland is on him all game. Will Fuller, I like Will Fuller this week. I don't think he's even anywhere close to what he had last week, but it wouldn't surprise me if he had 60, 70 yards and a touchdown. It wouldn't surprise me if he had 100 yards and a touchdown, but I do think they are going to limit the deep passes with Tyrann Mathieu. I think they're going to make sure they play him over the top for Will Fuller to make sure Will Fuller doesn't get off in this game. But I'm starting Will Fuller. I'm starting DeAndre Hopkins. You're never not starting, Deshaun Watson. For the running backs in this game, I rewatched some of the tape. Duke Johnson doesn't look completely terrible, but the problem is I just don't think they trust Duke to have a really any kind of workload. Last week a bunch of his runs were when they were just blowing Atlanta out, and he got a couple plays at the end of the game that looked good. But really, I don't think I'm starting either one of these running backs in this game. I think this is going to be a game where they're going to have to throw a lot, both teams, and it is what it is. So that's it for the Houston side of the ball. On the Kansas City side of the ball, if it sounds like Tyreek Hill is going to play in this game, if Tyreek Hill plays, you cannot play Byron Pringle. I have Byron Pringle written up in the wide receiver defense, wide receiver cornerback matchups. Tyreek Hill would take that spot if Pringle were to miss this game. I mean, if Hill was to miss this game, you would see Pringle on the field, and I would start him, because whoever's on that side of the ball, Tyreek Hill, Pringle, I don't care who it is, they're playing Lonnie Johnson, and Lonnie Johnson has been terrible this year. So I could see either one of those guys going off. Whichever guy it is, that's the guy you're playing. Mecole Hardman is a guy that I actually think will have a good game in this game, just because Bradley Roby is just, he's been hit or miss. He's either been pretty good or he's been terrible this season. So I could definitely see, Hardman getting a couple of deep shots. Travis Kelce is going to be a man amongst boys in this game. I love Travis Kelce this week. He's actually my favorite play tight end in DFS. He's a viable play every week in DFS, but I really think this game is going to be his. He hasn't had a touchdown this year yet, so I think this is the game where he finally gets in the end zone, and I think he has over 100 yards. So I would get him in as many DFS lineups you can get him in. Patrick Mahomes, hobbled last week. You heard all that news. You saw what he looked like in the game. I don't care. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to go off in this game at home. It's just, to me, this is a get-right game for Patrick Mahomes. And Damian Williams, if I'm going to start a Kansas City Chief running back, it's going to be Damian Williams. LaShawn McCoy is still banged up with that ankle. He just has not looked very good this year, other than, a couple of big runs. And Damian Williams, I think they're going to, hit him with a couple of passes in this game. And I also think he's going to get some run with the ball, and I could see him having a pretty good game. So that is it for me. I'm not starting either one of these defenses, obviously, and I think this is a huge game.
All right. Did we do the Baltimore game? Baltimore Cincinnati?
Did we?
I don't think we did that. Baltimore Cincinnati.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. I'll do the 8:00, the 8:20 game Sunday night, and then just do the Baltimore Cincinnati game.
Yep.
I think people want to hear about Lamar. He's been
yeah.
He's been electrifying. All right, so Pittsburgh and in LA. Let's start on Pittsburgh side of the ball because they're the away team. That's what I've been doing on my little routine. Obviously, you're not starting Mason Rudolph, especially against the Chargers. The defense has been good, and Rudolph is not. Juju Smith has not been good, but you're not going to sit Juju. He's basically, the one of the few bright spots on the Steelers. Although Johnson has looked pretty decent of late. I still don't think I would start him until he, shows that he might take that, that number two wide receiver role. But even so, I'm not a fan of the Steelers team right now. I think they're in shambles. They lost all their star players except for Juju and Connor. Big Ben's down, so I think the team is they're going to be in a rebuild phase. They're not the Dolphins, but they're just not really all that relevant right now. So I like Juju. Connor's a good start always. He's been consistent this year. He's not great, but he's not bad in any way. He's been productive. And Vance McDonald has looked pretty good. So, tight ends are tough to come by. So if you got Vance, I think, he's always a good start. He gets a lot of targets every week, especially when there's a backup quarterback in there. So that's who I like on the Pittsburgh side of the ball. I know Samuels had a big game a couple weeks ago, but I'm still not starting Samuels yet. So on the Charger side of the ball, I like Rivers this week. I got Rivers at number 12. So I got him as a QB1. I think he has a big week against the Steelers. He's at home. I think you could start either running back. You definitely start Melvin Gordon. You definitely start Eckler. I think they're going to, until, like I said earlier, until Melvin gets a little more situated and comfortable back into his role, Eckler, and even after that, Eckler's still going to be relevant. So both of these guys moving forward for a few weeks at least are both going to probably be similar numbers as far as fantasy goes. I think they're both going to be in that 15 range because they're both really, really, really good ball catchers, really good backs. I think you're definitely, without a doubt, you're starting Keenan Allen. He's a target machine. You're never not starting Keenan, regardless of who the matchup is. And then aside from that, what do we say that tight end Hunter Henry returned to practice, but he's not playing, right?
Yeah. He was full practice on Friday, but he's out for the game.
Gotcha. So, yep, that answers your question about Hunter Henry. If you picked him up, I know a lot of people probably did, seeing that he was, made a quicker recovery than people thought. But Hunter Henry is he might be one of those guys that goes down like a Tyler Eifert, where he just has a ton of talent and can't keep himself on the field. Aside from that, is Williams back?
Yes, Mike Williams, they're saying, is going to play.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought I read that. If Mike Williams is playing, I think you're starting Mike Williams because he's, the Steelers defense they don't cover really. So And I like the Chargers offense this week. So yeah, if Mike Williams is back, you're going to start Mike Williams as well.
Yep, I agree.
Neither Chargers defense I don't mind. At home against Steelers, but I mean I think there's better options, but I don't mind the Chargers defense.
Yeah, I think the Chargers defense are definitely a start.
Yeah.
Devlin Hodges is going to be the quarterback, and we didn't see enough of him, last week to really tell if he's great or bad. But I'm gonna go on the rookie, quarterback that's not good. You know what I mean? Especially going to LA. I definitely love the Chargers defense this week. So, it's going to be one of those, like Dan said, start Connor, start Juju, and the rest of them, you can't start any of them. It is what it is. Yeah, Connor, definitely. I just want to reiterate, what Dan said. Connor has been good, and now with no Samuels, I think he's going to get a ton of work. So, Connor is definitely a guy that, be happy that you are going to have him for the next month, because I think he is going to get a ridiculous amount of work. In the passing game, in the running game, he's just going to be crazy used with no Samuels.
Yeah, Samuels at least took a little bit of that passing game away from Connor's not terrible out of the backfield. He's not great, but that was Samuels' forte. His specialty was at least a third down back, a nice check down back, and it's all on Connor now. So yeah, he's definitely going to be like you say, getting a lot of the work.
Yep. All right, so the last game on the docket is going to be Baltimore-Cincinnati. So Cincinnati is going to Baltimore, and Cincinnati has just been bad all year. So this is going to be a quick one. You're starting Lamar Jackson. Obviously, he is the number one fantasy quarterback, or I think is he number one or number two? I think he's one.
I think he is one.
Yeah, he's one. So
I would expect him to be. He's been incredible.
He's been awesome. So, the number one fantasy quarterback, you're playing him. Mark Andrews, you're playing him against this terrible Cincinnati Bengals team. Marquise Brown, I'm playing him. Willie Snead, if I absolutely needed a flex, I would actually trot out Willie Snead this week because the Cincinnati team is bad. So I think, really anybody on this team is viable. Mark Ingram is probably one of my favorite running backs this week. I think Mark Ingram is in line for a huge game. The Bengals have been getting up 38 points per game to fantasy running backs, which is an incredible number. That's just a stupid number. That is really, really high. They are the worst run defense in football, and it's not close. It's like by a very wide margin. This Ravens offensive line is good, and this Bengals defensive line, other than Geno Atkins, is bad. So, it's as simple as that. On the Bengals side of the ball, I actually do think that Joe Mixon is going to have a pretty good game in this game because I just don't think that the, Ravens run defense is what it used to be. I think that, they're going to be able to make some holes. I think that the Bengals are going to make some holes for Mixon. I think they're going to get him more acclimated, into the passing game this week because they need to. They need to get the ball in his hands if they want to even try to win this game. Tyler Boyd, love him this week. He's going to be good. Auden Tate, if I absolutely need a wide receiver, you start him just because he has basically been on the field for 98% of snaps since John Ross has gone down. So, he's going to be on the field a lot is all I can say. I don't think he's any good, but it is what it is. Andy Dalton you can't start him. You just can't start him in this game. The Ravens' pass defense is better than their run defense, and, I don't like Andy Dalton going to Baltimore in a game where he doesn't have, all of his weapons. He has not been very good this year, and, this is not a get-right game for him. So, I'm staying away from Eifert. I'm staying away from, Damian Willis. I'm staying away from Giovanni Bernard. I'm staying away from all those guys. So it's basically Tate in a break glass for emergency situation, and Tyler Boyd, and the rest of the guys on this team, and Mixon, and and the rest of the guys are sucky butt. You just don't want any of them. They're bad. It's not a situation that I am interested in starting anyone. So that's it, guys. That is the podcast today. Remember to go to www.fourthandinchesff.com. That's the number 4, THNINCHESFF.com to get all of your information from the website. You know, we have a lot of information on that website, guys. Just, you know, wide receiver cornerback matchups, you know, breakdowns. We do waiver wire. There's just, check out the website. I promise you, you're going to find something that you didn't know on that website that's going to help you out in your fantasy leagues to help you win a championship. I promise. Go check it out. You're going to love it. And for us here at Fourth and Inches, peace.
See yous.